Hey guys, Alex and Dan from 7th Hour Films back again with Doctor Who Classic. Last time around was the androids of Tara. What happened on that one?
Well, they went to a planet where there were basically, I don't want to say completely medieval, but an upper Middle Ages type of society. And there was a young man who was supposed to be crowned the king, but his closest competitor was trying to have him assassinated. And there was a really kind of odd distinction between the royalty and the commoners, because the commoners knew science and knew how to build androids, and they were going to build an android to replace the king. And there was also a princess who looked like Romana. And anyway, it was a lot of fun. I liked especially the costuming and the sets and everything. Again, I think we were, I don't want to say we were put off, but certainly wondering about a society that seemed to be medieval and yet was advanced enough to have androids and yet didn't have, wheels or the internal combustion engine or anything like that.
Yeah, so it was just sort of a strange, because they never said if they had space technology either. It seemed like the most advanced thing we saw was just the androids.
Yeah.
So other than that, we're not really sure how advanced they are or how they're so advanced. I mean, you could go into a lot of lore about how they progressed as a society but still have this sort of medieval structure to them. But either way, it was still a very interesting episode. So yeah. So, and with that, we were able to get the fourth piece of the Key of Time. And so now we are on to number 5 here with the Power of Kroll, which, because I know some people get up in arms when I mention titles, that one, perfectly fine. I assume there will be some guy named Kroll. Obviously, this guy's going to be the bad guy, and he will have that power as the bad guy.
And one of the things about part 4 was that once they recovered the one of the pieces of the Key of Time, we never saw them put it together like we have in the other ones.
Yeah. Well, they didn't go back to the TARDIS at the end of it, so they left off on a joke of K9 being trapped on that boat, basically. But yeah, they didn't show going back to the TARDIS and putting it together, so we'll probably just have that at the top of this episode. But yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much it. You got anything else?
Well, just the weather in Oklahoma is supposed to be in the 60s today and in the 30s tomorrow. And then Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we will have 3 days below freezing. So, welcome to Oklahoma.
Yeah, so if you may notice over the next few days, namely the change in my wardrobe, because I will probably be wearing an extra layer when I record next week's videos. Although, probably not. I'll probably look exactly the same because that's just how my room works. So,
yes, I put on the hoodie, and as soon as I did, he went and turned up the fan to its highest level. So, we're back in the ice box.
Yeah, the ice box that has 2 monitors at bright 1080p and a computer next to it. So, it's very, very cold in here. Anywho, why don't we just go ahead and jump right into this episode of Doctor Who?
Here we go.
That too.
Thorne, we saw your landing. How did things go on Delta Magna?
Oh, fine.
Is that you, Bard Thorne?
You notice how crowded it is.
Alright, this is bigger than I thought it was.
These marshes go on for miles. The water doesn't hurt.
Try telling that to K9. He's marooned.
What's this room dirt look like?
Bit of a hard case. Dresses the part, wide-brimmed hat, bandolier. We can't miss him.
I don't intend to.
Well, he certainly got the wide-brimmed hat, but not the bandolier. Oh boy! I haven't seen those since the Third Doctor battled the Master on one, didn't he?
Oh, yeah. It was all of 5 minutes before someone got kidnapped.
Now, given that this does not appear to be summertime, I bet those gentlemen in green are very, very cold.
What were you doing in the swamp?
Catching butterfly.
Oh, I like a joke.
I'll try and think of one.
What were you doing in the swamp?
Look, you'd be none the wiser if I did tell you.
What were you doing in the swamp?
This is a terrible remake of Shrek.
Oh, this is the refinery. Nice model, but the waves are a little too large.
This is the probe dot. And you'll get a spear in your back. Kill 2 of my men already.
Attention, orbit shot in 10 minutes.
Orbit shot. Right, we'll watch it from the control center. You come with us.
Now, the tall guy there with the mustache looks very similar to an actor who appeared in the movie Zulu as the Sergeant Major, I think, but I don't think it's him.
Yes, operator's dust.
Would you let a small band of semi-savages stand in the way of progress?
No. Progress is a very flexible word. It can mean just about anything you want.
10, 9, 8,
All external
7,
doors sealed.
6, 5, 4.
Oh, now it's a party. Alrighty. That's part 1. Well, they do have a giant squid. So I'll give them that. Well, there definitely seems to be a theme to this episode. You know, I can't quite put my finger on it, though.
Well, we've seen it before. Obviously, very much an ongoing problem with the, what used to be called the British Empire, the British Commonwealth during this time period. And again, we go through and see this in successive Doctors as well, because we did the quick run through. There is this reckoning that the British people and the Americans and the French and the Germans and Portuguese and Spanish and all the rest, that after decades and sometimes centuries of using indigenous peoples' land and resources for themselves, they now have to account for the fact that the people have a right to their own land. So
Yeah.
it's a good theme. They're doing it very well here.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the gas miners, well, the methane, I guess, is a gas, although they're using it as a kind of like a biomass energy. They don't seem cruel. I mean, yes, they treat the one guy, the one swampy there, poorly. But, they're simply saying, hey, we need this stuff to help our people on Delta Magna, and, that's worth to them sacrificing the lands of these indigenous people who are, in their opinion, too primitive to understand the kind of resources that they have.
Yeah.
So, but the fact that they really don't watch the Doctor, the fact that he's able to slip away and grab a canoe and get into the swamps by himself, seems to me that they're a little distracted.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's because it's a sort of thing of like, I mean, it's a thing of like, I mean, I don't want to say they're like not racist towards these swampies. Clearly they are, but they also, I guess there's a slight difference between, this sounds so stupid, but I guess the portrayals of like intensities of races, like here, because they're busy.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that's like, yes, they are terrible to these swampies. They also have things that they need to do. So but it's still obviously terrible what they're doing to them.
There's a term for that. It's literally called casual racism.
Yeah.
You think that you're doing what you need to be done for your own people, and again, it's not that they're out there deliberately, because they have the weapons to be able to destroy the indigenous people if they wanted to.
Yeah.
And yet they're not, because they're understanding that perhaps they could be used as cheap labor.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's also not the beginning of like Prince of Egypt or something. So it's one of those where it's like they're literally just here to do a job. It's just that this job is very terrible for the people that already live here. So, which it is sort of an interesting thing because I feel like in most other stories they would also like, I don't know, I feel like the indigenous people would be kind of portrayed differently, whereas these guys, it's like, yeah, they don't understand what a signature is when Rome Dutt asked for it. But other than that, they seem to be pretty talkative people, you know? So...
Well, again, this is very much the American experience with our indigenous peoples here. You know, we never understood that in their own way they were a very advanced group of peoples. You know, that they had farming techniques that were equal to anything in Europe. The one thing that they did not have was this belief that their deity had given them dominion over the earth. I mean, I always used to teach that in my Oklahoma history classes. The main difference between the Europeans, the Spanish, the English, and the French, is that, again, based on their interpretation of the book of Genesis, that God has given mankind dominion over all the earth. The earth is here for people to use. Whereas the natives said, our deity, the Great Spirit, has said, yes, the earth is here for us to use, but it does not belong to us. All right? We cannot own land. And so when the British and the French and the Spanish would come in and say, you know, we need this kind of land, the natives originally said, well, sure, you can use it, but you can't own it. And that's what started the clash of cultures.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, like, it would be interesting if that sort of thing was portrayed in a story like this, but obviously it's that, I mean, these guys, obviously, it's not that they want to own it, it's that they want to take all the resources. Yeah. So it's just it's I guess it's a less subtle version of the Pirate Planet when you start to think about it. Yeah. It's like, because, and again, I guess different levels of that. Although in the Pirate Planet, they never go over, you know, the species that inhabit those planets they plunder. But
and so far, other than the fact that they know that the segment of the Key of Time is here, there's no clue as to what it would be.
Yeah.
Because she said, you know, it's in a 42-degree vector, or something like that, you know, unless it was right above us, which they dismissed, but maybe it is. Maybe it is somehow floating in space or floating in the atmosphere.
Yeah, so maybe it's a squid. So, I mean, and again, to their credit, when they talk about it, it's like, oh, this is what they call their giant squid. It's like, oh, they got a giant squid. So, I hope that is, like, unleashed and destroys these refineries or something. So, but yeah, and you're probably right that they were probably very cold while they were doing that. So, and it's also just interesting, just the look of them in general, that it's like they're completely green, you know? Yeah. And obviously it's good visually. It's good visually against the people at the refinery, but at the same time, when you put them into just normal sort of nature and you look at it, it's like, well, you guys look out of place. But that's just because that's just what the makeup and stuff was.
Well, yeah, theoretically, out in the swamp, they would blend in better because the swamp is mostly green and, you know, earth tones and things like that. Yeah. So, yeah, I think the makeup and the hair that they're doing is very interesting. They are, you know, obviously humanoid and don't have any other distinguishing characteristics other than green skin. So,
yeah, so...
I want to say, even if this is summer, the temperature is only in the upper 70s or low 80s, so... And I'm sure they took great care with applying green makeup over their entire bodies, because that is actually something that cuts off oxygen to the skin, and you can literally die from it. Like a cross between a squid and a mushroom.
There. Oh, it's just a costume.
I wouldn't have thought it was worthwhile. They're producing 100 tons of compressed protein twice a day.
As much as that?
Yes, we're sending it back to Delta Magna in orbit shot capsules.
But it doesn't make sense. I mean, how can they possibly produce that much protein? Where's it coming from?
I don't know. I haven't discovered that yet. But they're producing it in sufficient quantities to make it worth fighting over.
Oh, no.
The whole idea
It's Soylent Green.
of Kroll and getting
There's something's lifted up the whole bed and then settled back again.
It can't be a gas buildup. Not over such a wide area.
Well, we'd better sink a probe right into the center and take some samples.
That fellow's disappeared.
Huh?
Probably is a
That
giant
doctor fellow
squid.
has disappeared. Gone.
You think Kroll really exists?
Well, does it matter? Does it really matter? You know what I think? I think that Kroll's still around, and he's just about due for his fourth manifestation.
Well, if we had any sense, we wouldn't stay.
Gozer the Gozerian.
Catch up, Bill.
Where did it come from?
Up, yeah, that's a big squid.
I will talk to Kroll, and he will tell me by which of the 7 holy rituals they must meet death.
That's a lot of rituals.
Those depth charges are not going to make much impression on that creature.
Do they keep cutting to commercials? They keep doing this weird fade out.
That's twice now, yeah.
Can you think of a better way?
Maybe this is like the PBS version.
If it were hostile, we'd have known of it before.
I've seen it. It's hostile.
All right, all I'm saying is that those depth charges will only provoke it. Director!
Enough talk. Take them away. So Kroll's on the move. I've less time than I thought.
Oh, that's terrible. Ugh. Just imagine just the pipes getting smaller as you go, but you're just getting... Ugh. It's a good thing this is TV PG, otherwise... blood and guts everywhere. Ugh. Well, it's an interesting roller coaster of there's a Kroll, there isn't a Kroll, there is a Kroll. And he's actually much bigger than you would think. So that was interesting. Also, I didn't realize that it's like, oh, it's the whole thing of, well, we're taking their lands and stuff and we're getting rid of them. But this is the second time they've done that.
Well, again, in the United States, in 1830, when the aptly named Indian Removal Act was passed, there were tribes from the New England and eastern Great Lakes area that were moved out into the northern Great Plains, into what is now Nebraska and Kansas. But as the Civil War passed and people started moving into Nebraska and Kansas and realizing that those were good agricultural areas, the 2 senators from Kansas, in fact, wrote a Reconstruction bill, even though there were very few battles held in Kansas. And the whole point of their Reconstruction bill was to give money to the people of Kansas to relocate the Indians who had already been relocated there down to Oklahoma, down to Indian territory. And then those same 2 senators bought up that land at a cheap price from the government and sold it at exorbitant prices to new settlers. Now, that today would be illegal, but back then it was just business.
Yeah. So, this is a really dumb thought that I just had in my head, but because it was called the Indian Removal Act, I just thought it was like, man, it would be hilarious if you had some sort of situation like, hear me out. It'd be hilarious if something like this happened and it's like, oh yes, well it's the Indian Removal Act, and then you get some, Saul Goodman kind of lawyer come in and it's like, well, actually, Your Honor, they aren't Indians, they are the Native Americans, therefore this doesn't apply. Yeah. So, but obviously they were too racist to care back then.
Well, you want to talk about lawyer tactics. Just yesterday, the lawyers for the former president argued that the $250 million lawsuit by the New York State Attorney General against the ex-president's many corporations technically doesn't have essentially legal standing, because although all of these companies are branded as the Trump Organization, the actual Trump Organization does not exist. It's simply a branding name. So when you file a lawsuit against the Trump Organization, you're filing a lawsuit against an organization that doesn't actually exist. So, but yeah, the after the Mexican-American War in 1845, well, it actually started in 45 and then ended in 48. There were states west of the Mississippi that essentially used the Indian Removal Act, even though when it was written, it only was supposed to apply to states east of the Mississippi. And there had been no congressional action to extend it west of the Mississippi, but Arkansas and Texas specifically removed their Native Americans up to Oklahoma as well.
Oh, yeah. Everybody got shoved into one little area, and then they took that too. So,
yeah. They were fine putting all of the Native Americans into Indian Territory and what would later become Oklahoma Territory, because at the time it was just farmland, and they had plenty of farmland all the way up to the Canadian border. But the reason why all of this was ultimately taken away from the natives is when the Americans discovered oil in Oklahoma, because with the invention of the internal combustion engine and the use of that in automobiles, people suddenly said, wow, we've got a whole bunch of Native Americans sitting on a gigantic oil field just outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma, so we need to dissolve their reservation and take their oil from them. What they didn't realize is that many of the tribes had already allotted land to individual natives. So, for example, when the Glen Pool, which is just south of Tulsa, opened up, there was a woman named Ida Glen. The Glen Pool is named after her. She owned the land that the major pocket of oil was under. And so when the oil companies came to her, she said, sure, I will let you drill for it, but the land remains mine and you'll pay me a royalty for it. And obviously, her lawyers were very good, because it was one of those things like you say, oh, you just pay me 2 cents an acre for every acre that your people come in on. And they didn't realize that when you put hundreds of thousands of people into that area, that causes a huge amount of money to accumulate, even at only 2 cents per acre. So.
Yeah, so this episode definitely feels more like a concept. I mean, I guess maybe it's just because I don't know too much of British colonialism, but it feels more of a take on American colonialism.
It does. Although, again, the as we saw in the Demons of Punjab, the most recent British Empire, British Commonwealth thing that was somewhat like this was in India. But I can't remember. I know they were getting cotton from India. I can't remember if they were getting salt, but yeah, they were exploiting the people of the South Asian subcontinent for a lot of their resources. And ultimately, the people of India just said, hey, this is our land, and there are, millions of us, and only a few 100,000 of you, so, you got a choice. And the British said, okay, here, take your land.
Yeah, so I think there was a joke in, I don't know if you've ever seen the video, The History of the Entire World, I guess, but it's a really funny video. And I think in that, it's like, and then over in India, there's this guy named Gandhi who decides to not eat until the British leave. Somehow that works. And then they leave.
That was always fascinating, because Mahatma Gandhi was revered by the Indian people. And basically he said, if I die from starvation, all of the Hindus in India will rise up against you. So he was basically saying, you can't afford to allow me to die, because you will then see a massacre on a scale that the British Commonwealth had never seen before.
Yeah. We should react to that video sometime. It's a really good, interesting video. So.
And once again, somebody suggested that we look at I think it's a 6-part miniseries of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, because Douglas Adams had done one of these episodes, one of these serials. So when we find the time.
Yeah, someday.
I'm wondering if the technique in that last shot, where he gets sucked into the pipe, is something that I did while I was an actor in college. I was literally eaten by a Volkswagen. And what they did was they filmed it and then flipped it so that in the actual presentation of it, it was running backwards, so you see me actually being taken inside when actually I was climbing out of the Volkswagen. Yeah, I think that was running backwards.
What is this seventh ritual? It is the slowest of all.
I knew it.
I tried to persuade Rankin that only round Duck deserved to be punished by the seventh ritual and that you others should die by the first. That's very easy. They just throw you down the pit and drop rocks on you.
Oh, thank you.
Scarf, what has the sun got to do with it?
As the creepers dry, it shortens them. It pulls the plank.
Ah! And snaps our spines. How ingenious. Now I know the purpose of the window.
You'll be able to die happy, won't you?
What is what?
I'm sorry this has to happen, but if Kroll's not appeased, he will not help the people of the lakes.
Well, he didn't do much for you last time, did he? Killing the high priest and swallowing the symbol of power.
They're very chatty for executioners.
It's all prepared. All is prepared.
Swallowing the symbol of power, is that the key of time?
Oh, maybe.
Great Kroll, oh most powerful one. So let it be.
So let it be written. So let it be done.
I can feel it dragging already.
Sorry you didn't stay on Delta Magna now, eh? Who paid you to bring the natives' guns?
Thorn. He wanted an excuse to wipe them out.
And who do they think brought them?
I told him the guns were sent by the Sons of Earth. I believe colonizing the planet is a mistake. They want us all to return to the Earth and starve. Oh, my ankles are breaking.
Imagination.
What is estimated distance?
You know, it's a strange way of killing them considering they're not all the same height. So the doctor should die last.
That makes it still hasn't moved.
Probably doesn't need to move much. We were just trying to decide what it'd look like out of the water.
Very big and very ugly. What do you think it looks like?
That'll stop the sun from drying up the creepers.
Oh, yeah.
Kroll is our god and protector. Kroll killed Mensch. Is that protection? If he's our god, why has he attacked us in the past?
He punishes us when we displease him.
And he punishes those who displease his servants, Barley.
Wow, all that makeup in the rain, that was a bold filming choice.
It's not that bad yet.
I'll try a pitch higher.
What?
And the person flies.
Huh.
Nellie Melba's party piece, though she could only do it with wine glasses.
Tension it's easy.
Good job.
Feet out!
You ever noticed that the doctor's pants had striped bottoms on them? I noticed that earlier in the episode, but I never remember seeing that before.
I think it's definitely a new outfit. It looks like a new shirt.
But if the Dryfoot are not found and sacrificed according to the holy ritual, then all my people will suffer the anger of Kroll.
They cannot have gone far, Rankin. No Dryfoot knows the secret path through the swamps.
Go after them and find them.
Once again, imagine the casting call for this show. You have to be willing to cover your entire body in green paint and wear a mop on your head.
Oh, I don't hate them, fella. I just want them removed permanently. I spent many years persuading the company to back this project, and now that we're on the verge of success, I'm not going to be stopped by lily-livered sentimentalists wailing about the fate of a few primitive savages.
But you don't hate him. Alrighty.
Well, I have to say, it's a very tight script.
Yeah.
You know, and like you said, these are not the average kinds of colonizers that we've seen who are overbearing. At least these guys do have some reservations, except they said, I don't hate these people. I just need all their resources.
It could have been anybody, really. So it could have been their own human people. It's just that it just happens to be the Swampies. So
I'm still wondering if it's the Kroll creature that produces the methane, and if that's true, that's essentially flatulence, because that's what cattle and other bovine and what is it, porcine pigs and all animals that are ruminants produce huge amounts of methane.
Yeah, and is it so? Okay, so they're getting the methane. They said something about protein, though.
Yeah.
Are they turning methane into protein?
See, that's what I didn't understand. I was assuming that they were doing, like what they do here in Oklahoma. There's this stuff called switchgrass. It's prairie grass that you can put it in through a process where it breaks down the cellulose and ultimately ends up producing ethanol, which is what they're now mixing into gasoline to make the gasoline cheaper and make it, stretch further. Like here in Oklahoma, we have this stuff called E85. It's what we put in our cars. It's 85% gasoline, but it's 15% ethanol. And you can use corn or anything that contains a real heavy amount of cellulose, which, again, in Oklahoma, because we sell corn for feed and for human consumption, that's why they're taking the switchgrass, because it's literally just prairie grass, and half of Oklahoma is prairie grass. So it's, a free source of biomass. I guess ethanol is the best word for it.
Yeah. But, because that's just what I was wondering, is that if they're turning methane into protein, that's just, it doesn't make sense in general. Also, this doesn't matter to the plot at all. But it's just one of those things, like, okay, so you make the protein, then what do you do with the protein? Let's see, protein, you can eat the protein. It's like, I hope you're not eating squid farts. That just sounds terrible. We could just eat the squid at that point. So,
yeah, and again, it's a noble cause. They're trying to send the protein back to, was it Delta Magna, to help feed the people, but they're doing it at the expense of the Swampies.
Yeah, so yeah, and of course, again, none of that actually matters to the plot at hand. So, I do find it interesting, though. I feel like in a normal Doctor Who episode, this would be more about taking down the refinery and helping the native people and everything. But honestly, the Doctor and Romana don't really seem to care. Like, they're just going to kind of let the two of them play out as they will. Whichever side wins, whichever one gets eaten by Kroll, gets eaten by Kroll. We're really just here. Well, they're trying to just survive at the moment, and then at a point they'll find the last piece of, or this piece of the Key of Time. So yeah, it just seems kind of odd that it's like they're not really. It's like they're involved with the plot, but they're not like active like movers of the plot.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Kind of like that theory that people have about the original Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
That he's completely incidental to the plot, because without him, sooner or later, the Nazis would have discovered the Ark of the Covenant, they would have opened it, and everything that had happened would have happened.
Look. How does that sneak up on you?
You have a spear. Stab it.
I have thought.
Because you could kill us all. The atmosphere here is thin already. Now a fireball that size could asphyxiate us.
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Have you worked out the risk?
Countdown commencing. Now get to your places.
Fella, we've got to stop him.
You punch him.
Eugene, get back.
You can't do it, Thorn.
Touch of the boat button and I swear I'll kill you.
Then kill me, but you're not going to kill the others.
I warned you, fella. You had me warning.
That was cold-blooded murder.
The countdown! Look! It hasn't aborted, it hasn't stopped.
In doubt, cut everything. Simple.
Good job.
003.
Spineless fool hadn't interfered.
He'd be alive now, wouldn't he? And I'm reporting you for murder.
It was justifiable homicide. You heard me warning not to touch that aboard panel. It was an act of sabotage.
He didn't like our methods. That did not make him a saboteur.
Put your hands where I can see them and walk straight ahead.
Haven't you forgotten something?
What?
Shouldn't you say, don't make any sudden moves?
Don't make any sudden moves. Now get straight to the center.
I feel like they were in a really good position to get him.
Oh, look. It's coming this way.
Yes, and it's going to attack us.
Well, I don't think it's come to shake hands.
Shut up!
Now look, there's still time to get that shuttle and get out of here.
If it had meant to attack us, it would have come before going to the settlement.
Maybe it's saving you from putting.
I said shut up!
Still coming.
Ah!
Oh, that works.
We surrender.
Many have died because of you, Dryfoot. You have been promised to Kroll.
And does Kroll know that?
Kroll is all-wise, all-seeing.
All baloney. Kroll couldn't tell the difference between you and me and half an acre of dandelion and bird dog.
Great one, we ask only that the Dryfoots and their abominations be crushed by thy mighty power. Master, this is thy servant!
Well, I've had a happy life. Can't complain. 760. Not a bad age.
That's like the ending of Dead Man's Chest. The whole squid was just part of the key.
There'll never be another Kroll. It was a segment that did it. Get back there now, get back.
Alrighty.
Yeah, they could have taken a little bit more time there with Fenner and said, hey, listen, why don't you all work together? Happy ending sort of thing. But they at least set it up.
I mean, they don't really have a reason not to kill him, so it's kind of dangerous where they left Fenner. But, I don't know. Maybe he can distract them and run to that shuttle he talked about. So,
And also might have been fun after they got into the TARDIS and it started to go away. The little squid on the beach just started, moving its tentacles.
well, so... Alrighty, that was the Power of Kroll.
As you usually say, very interesting because it was not the usual, fanatic colonizers against the fanatical indigenous peoples. It really did kind of show parts of both sides, which was kind of interesting for a change.
Yeah, because honestly, because Thawne didn't start out as, the crazy sort of guy we normally get, but he eventually got to that point. But then they showed the other side of that being Ranquin, who was just the leader of the Swampies, but over time he was just too devoted to Kroll that it was his undoing, basically. And then you're just left with, the rest of the Swampies, who will now go off and live a good life, and Fenner, who's just gonna have to kind of go back home. So yeah, it's an interesting take, definitely, because I guess you could honestly say it's like, who is really the villain of this story?
Yeah.
Which is not a thing, it's not a question that is normally so complicated in a colonizer story. So it's an interesting approach, definitely.
Yeah.
But I guess it just shows that it's it's not one evil thing. It's specific people that maybe not even evil, but they just go too far.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was definitely interesting. So yeah, let's see. Okay, so they had a whole thing with Rome Dutt that he was paid by Thawne specifically to give them the guns. So they were right in when they said, You know, it was like, you gave us bad guns intentionally, and that's why we're going to execute you. And honestly, they were right. So that was interesting. And then with the seal of that, he was going to discredit the Sons of Earth, which is interesting. You could honestly probably do more episodes with that. You know, it does make me question. It always makes me question, like, what year this is supposed to be. Like, at what point in human history is this? Because we've had like 25 or so, you know, human colonists stories that, you know, it's like, okay, so this one, the Earth is gone, clearly, but now there's what's left of the human population. They're going out, they are colonizing some places, but clearly now we have the sons of Earth who don't want to. I most likely just want to stay on whatever planet they've been able to take, which is interesting. So yeah, but it definitely does set up, I guess, the world building of, you know, the difference between the people at the refinery and then the Sons of Earth and all of that. And then you had, okay, they also, so the other guy there, the guy that got killed there, what was his name again? It was like Dugin or something. Yeah. But I swear originally they said Eugene, and it was spelled with a Y instead of a D. And so I was like, what happened there? What happened to his name?
Well, I suspect that was simply a matter of the person who does the subtitles misinterpreting either one or the other.
Yeah, so I could have sworn, but I mean, it sounded like they were saying, obviously it doesn't matter.
Now, if you went back to the first episode and ran the credits, you could see if he was listed as Eugene in the first one.
Yeah, so we could try that.
Yeah, Dugin.
Huh. That's so weird.
That was just a mistranslation by the guy who's doing the subtitles.
Either that, or just someone on set just mispronounced the name, and they just had to roll with it. So anyway, and again, doesn't matter. But it's just something I catch because I'm like that. I also caught, I don't remember, I think it was episode 2, that they kept doing those fade outs between scenes.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if this was the PBS version or something. I don't know. PBS has commercials, right? Or do they?
No.
They don't? Okay.
Well, for example, they would run the entire episode of Doctor Who, and then there would be commercials, but it's for PBS shows and foundations. But there's no, they're non-commercial like the BBC's originally was, in that your program may be 55 minutes long, but then you get 5 minutes of advertisement for the BBC.
Yeah. Well, because that was the thing. It was like, okay, if they're with those fades, and it was only in one episode that happened, I was thinking maybe that's the American version of the episode, which, and again, doesn't matter. But it's just something that I noticed. It's that, I guess that's my editor's eye. It's like, why are there multiple fades in one episode but not the other? So, anyway. But yeah, so let's see. I probably didn't take amazing notes on this episode. So, but we had everything with, I guess, just the backstory of the Swampies, which they never gave another name for them. Yeah. But apparently moved here. So it sounded like they were moved here a couple hundred years ago from their original planet. And then now they realize that, you know, oh, there's this great resource on this moon. So now we got to start mining out this moon. But instead of, you know, relocating them somewhere else, it seems like, well, we're just going to put this in and they're just going to die off, basically. So they couldn't be bothered, basically, to relocate them this time, which is interesting. And then somewhere in there was the legend of Kroll. And now this is the fourth. They said this was the fourth manifestation of Kroll. So the first time around, it ate the High Priest. It ate the fragment of the Key of Time, and that's what made it so grandiose, basically. And then after that, it would just keep popping up every so often until now there's somebody here who is actually looking for that piece of the key. So,
and again, they never did explain though the methane protein connection.
Yeah, so it was something about they were getting methane. I can only assume it's that they got methane that was being produced by Kroll and refining that into protein and then firing that at the planet, which is interesting. And I also like how they distinguish that they're specifically like they're not like coming and picking up the product or anything. They're specifically launching it, and then it'll just naturally drift over to the planet. Because there's a YouTube channel. They do a lot of great videos, but I can never pronounce their name. But they do a lot of interesting videos of like, oh, what would it be like if we tried terraforming Venus and stuff? And a lot of times they'll have like these inventions where it's like, well, we simply, all we have to do is launch these, things that we need off of the planet. We launch it just into orbit, and then basically have a hook catch it and chuck it, and then because it's in space, it's not going to slow down until it hits its target. So I like that sort of distinction that it's like, oh, it's not just the standard, freighters or anything. Yeah. So, and again, that doesn't matter either. It's just interesting world building. So, but yeah, they also said the symbol, the power of Kroll, the symbol of power could tell the future. That never came back at all, because they.
Is that part of the key of time though? Did the White Guardian ever mention something about being able to tell the future?
I don't think so. I mean, I guess it could be that each piece has its own function, but the most we've ever seen, because they're not really that involved with these stories anyway, is that they can sort of change an appearance. At least that was in the Stones of Blood. They mentioned that. So yeah, I guess it could just be that piece had that specific power. I don't know. By the way, we're 5 episodes into this 6-story season and have yet to meet the Black Guardian they keep talking about.
Yeah.
Unless there's going to be a twist that Romana is the Black Guardian, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Or once they assemble the key of time, it will either become or summon the Black Guardian.
Yeah.
That's an alternative.
And again, from the beginning, I theorized that the White Guardian is actually the Black Guardian, just in disguise. Like you didn't question it just because he put on a white suit. So I don't know, but I'm hoping the next one, which should be, I think actually somebody said that the next one will be the last 6-parter of the whole show. So and from here on out, it's 4 episodes or less. So yeah, I assume next episode will be more about this whole story arc. So let's see. We had everything with the 7th ritual. I like the first ritual, though, that they just chuck you down a hole and throw rocks at you. It's like, it's very simple. And then once you get all the way up to 7, and then it's like, well, we're going to put you on this specific rack, and then these specific trees, these branches, once they're in the sunlight, they expand. So it'll just keep expanding until eventually your spine snaps. And it's like, how did you think of this? It's just like, this is a very elaborate way of killing someone.
And quite honestly, I don't know that would actually work, because very similar to the device, the rack used in the Middle Ages, I think what would happen is it would literally pull your hands or your arms off, and then either your feet or your legs off before it would ever crack your spine.
Yeah.
Because your spine literally carries, the entire weight. So it was very primitive. I mean, I understand what they thought it would do, but again, you wrap that around the wrists, and that's gonna pop your hands off, because that's a very weak joint there.
Yeah.
Compared to how the spine connects to everything.
Because, I mean, they were probably working on the logic of a rope, that if you have a rope and you've got equal amounts of force on it, eventually it would break right at the halfway point. But a rope is one consistent thing, and the body is not. And you're right, it would either do that, or it would deglove your hand, or something else. Yeah. So yeah, it probably wouldn't have worked the way they thought. But it was also still interesting that, like, I feel like they should have had some mention that it should take longer to kill the Doctor because he's so much taller than the other two. So
this is on subject but completely off topic. Also within about the last 50 or 60 years, there's also been questionings about Roman crucifixion because, biblically speaking, Jesus reappears to his apostles with the holes in his hand. But modern day scientists said that would nearly be impossible because trying to hold up a body from there would be almost impossible. It would rip through there. So it was thought that instead you'd have to put it between these two bones. That would actually hold the body up. Now, of course, he was probably also tied, so if he was tied at the wrist and then put the nails through the hand, that would make sense.
Yeah. Or they just hit both, and they only mentioned the hands. He had long sleeves on that day. I don't know. I think, isn't it when they were filming The Passion of the Christ, and I guess they were going to put, the film Jim Caviezel up there. Apparently, I don't know if this is true or not, but apparently they had somebody, getting him ready on the cross for that. But I guess the guy didn't speak very good English, so when they were going through, he was literally about to drive a nail through Jim Caviezel's hand, and then they all panicked, like, wait, no, don't actually do that. And he's like, oh, okay. And then, so...
I had not heard that story.
Yeah, I can't confirm if that's true or not. Maybe if somebody checks the IMDb trivia or Wikipedia or something, those are trusted sources, but I don't know. Maybe that's in, like, the commentary or something for that, but I think I heard that once, that they almost actually did drive the nail through him. So, yeah, but it's definitely an interesting ritual. It makes me wonder what the other 5 rituals were, though, where it's because you have such an easier one of just we chuck you down a hole and throw rocks at you, and then the last one being, well, we stretch you out until your spine snaps in half. It's like, so what are the other 5? What are I assume they're all like different levels of intensity too. So, and I like that. Was it Varlic was like, well, yeah, we should use the 7th ritual for Rome Dut because he betrayed us and everything, but the others, we don't need that much,
Yeah.
So,
but the stoning thing is not only Old and New Testament, but I mean, if you go up to even New England, in the Salem witch trials, they pressed Giles Corey to death. They didn't stone him; they just laid him on a slab of rock and then started piling more and more stones on him until it supposedly crushed him.
Yeah. So, and then they were saved by the rain, which you would almost think. I guess that room specifically was set up so that the creeper wood would dry, so that it would stretch. But I was just kind of thinking, it's like, this place must be really humid all the time. Like, this has to be like Louisiana or something out in the bayou. It's terrible. And every time when they would walk through a place and you just hear whack, 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 and it was like, oh, I hate this place, honestly. Like, I'm a very dry person, So there's all that, but it's like the fact that they specifically have this, torture device based on how dry it is, I think is very interesting. Yeah. But
I'd be very interested to know if anybody, well, I'm sure they'll tell us this, where this was filmed, because I don't think it was in the moors, because the moors have a lot more hills, and it's not lowland swamp. So this is obviously, I think, somewhere in southern England, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah,
maybe it may be in the eastern part of the country. I know that there were a lot of they call them bogs and fens over in East Anglia. So if anybody knows, please let us know.
Yeah. So, and then we had everything with the rocket, and then I like this kind of goes back to what was it? It was Pirate Planet, where they had this really complicated door, and the doctor just got like a hairpin and opened it, and he was like, yes, as advanced as the technology is, it makes it more susceptible to a primitive method. So I like that he literally just goes up to the rocket, finds the panel, and busts it with a hammer, and it's like, oh, there you go. You didn't account for that.
Where did he get the hammer? Is that part of the materialization of objects out of his coat?
I think so, yeah.
And what were the things on his lapels? Did you notice he had little brooches or something there on his lapels?
Yeah, it's definitely a different jacket than we're used to.
And then, I swear if we go back and look at previous episodes, he doesn't have the bizarre, bottom leggings on his pants. That's the first time I've noticed that, and it was very, very noticeable.
Yeah, so... But yeah, his jacket, I mean, who knows what all is in his jacket. So it kind of reminds me, I can't remember what episode it is, but there's at least one episode of Ed, Edd n Eddy where Ed just opens his jacket and there's just a fridge, and they just pops it open, gets some gross thing out of it, and they just puts it back. And I always love that stuff. It's the dumbest thing. So, but yeah. And then, yeah, we had the interesting, I guess, parallel between Thawne and Renquin, where they both just kept kind of going further and further, and Thawne committing murder, and it's interesting. He goes off as like, oh, it was justified homicide and everything, but I like Fenner just still going, even though he's still doing his job because he doesn't want to die. But it was interesting just how much he kept discrediting what he was saying. So that was good. So hopefully Fenner got out of there, and he's gonna head off to like go work at a convenience store next or something. I don't know. I don't think refineries are up his alley. It'll be like in Andor when the corporate officer, after he blows it in the first 3 episodes, he gets sent back to Coruscant. He goes and has a horrible desk job. So
spoilers.
So this is, people have probably seen it by now. It's not too major a spoiler. So. But anyway, yeah. So hopefully the rest of the Swampies didn't kill him, but yeah. But that's pretty much it. It was also an episode without K9, which I like. They put that down. It's like, yeah, we can't have K9 out here. It's too wet. So.
And what's up next?
Next up, last episode of the season is the Armageddon Factor, which will be 6 parts. So we'll cover it in 2 videos. And yeah. Will we see the Black Guardian? Only time will tell. I would almost think it would be funnier if there just is no Black Guardian. They just said that to keep the Doctor on his toes or something. It's like, oh, well, you just need motivation, because otherwise the Doctor would probably just like blow it off. It's like, oh, well, if there's no pressing matter, I don't really need to do this. So, but yeah, you got anything else?
I got nothing.
Then that is pretty much it. With all that being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. There's a bunch of links on screen if you want to go click around any of those. There's a playlist for all of our Doctor Who classic reactions, as well as another playlist for all of my modern Doctor Who reactions if you want to go check those out. There's also a subscribe button and a Patreon button on screen, as well as other links in the description if you want to go check out any of those. See you guys later.